Not all stories are told in daylight. Here we tell you the stories they warn you not to repeat, and the ones they pray aren't true. Come, sit closer to the fire, because tonight's story isn't just a tale. It's something that's been whispered about for centuries. And if you believe the accounts, it's something that still walks among us, something that watches, something that waits. This one has been called many things over the years, but most know it simply as the Rake. The earliest known mention comes from a weathered leather-bound journal, dated the year 1961. The author's name has been lost to time, but the entry itself survives, preserved in an archive in upstate New York, where it sits in a climate-controlled vault. The handwriting is cramped, the ink faded to a rusty brown. The words, though, still carry the same unease they must have when they were first scratched onto the page. He comes in the night, silently, without the whisper of a footstep. We see him only on the edge of firelight, when the eyes betray us. It is not a man, though it takes a man's shape, too long in the limbs, too thin in the face. His mouth is wrong. I have seen it open wider than the Lord intended. The writer goes on to describe seeing the creature crouched at the edge of the settlement one winter night, half hidden by a pile of snow and debris. It made no move, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. The hounds refuse to hunt when his scent is near. They tuck tail and whine, as though they sense what we cannot name. And the children, they speak of a thin man who stands by their beds while they sleep, who calls them by name though no one taught it to him. The journal entry turns darker as the days pass. The author writes of livestock disappearing, not slaughtered, not dragged away by wolves, but gone without a trace, as though they had simply vanished. On the fourth night, the settlement awoke to find one of their own missing. No struggle, no prints in the snow, only the door hanging open and a trail of frost leading out into the trees. The final page is smeared and uneven, the writing hurried. I fear we are being hunted, one by one. It is not flesh it seeks, but something deeper. I hear it outside my door even now. I have bolted it well, but the wood is thin. I do not think it will matter when it chooses to enter. The journal ends here. No more entries. The author was never mentioned in any other records, and in the margins of that last page there is a single word written so faintly it almost disappears into the paper. Forgive me. That was the first account we know of, but not the last. Centuries later, in the summer of 2006, a man in the northeastern United States claimed he had an encounter so disturbing that it would haunt him the rest of his life. He kept a written record, one that was later found in his home after he disappeared. 3 years ago, I woke up in the middle of the night. It was almost pitch black, but the dim glow from the streetlight outside was just enough to paint a faint outline of my bedroom furniture. I didn't know why I woke up. No bad dream, no noise, just that strange gut-level awareness that something's wrong. I lay there for a moment, eyes adjusting. That's when I saw it. At the foot of my bed, hunched low, was a pale shape. My first thought was that it was a person, thin, almost starved looking, sitting completely still. But the longer I stared, the more wrong it seemed. Its arms were too long, hands curled on the floor like an animal's, and its head, it was cocked at an unnatural angle, like it was studying me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was locked in a vice. And then it moved, not forward, not towards me, but in this strange, fluid way, like it unfolded itself without standing. It crawled up the side of the bed in seconds. I felt its weight press into the mattress. Its face came close enough that I could smell it. This cold, damp, earthy smell like rotting leaves after rain. It didn't touch me, it just opened its mouth, and it was wrong. No human jaw could open like that. Rows of small, uneven teeth and a dark that seemed deeper than shadow. It didn't make a sound. Not then. And then, without warning, it leaned back and let out this dry, rasping hiss. My body finally reacted. I screamed, rolled off the bed, and scrambled for the light. When it came on, there was nothing there. No sound of retreat, no open window, no sign anyone had been there at all. But when I looked at the sheets, the fabric where it had crouched was damp, as if something wet had been pressed into it. For weeks afterwards, I didn't sleep more than an hour or two at a time. Every creak, every gust of wind made my skin crawl. I started keeping a knife on the nightstand, though deep down I knew it wouldn't matter. If it wanted me, it would come again. It never did. Not directly, but I started finding small signs. Wet footprints in the kitchen floor in the morning, dirt scattered by the back door, the faint smell of earth in my hallway. I moved to a new apartment after 3 months, left almost everything behind, and still, sometimes I wake up in the night, heart pounding, sure that I'll see it at the foot of the bed again. This story comes from a man who worked late-night security at a small, rural television station. It was a lonely job, just him, a bank of monitors, and static-filled hum from equipment that always seemed older than it should be. One night, during a storm, one of the monitors in the corner flickered to snow. The feed it was supposed to display, a local weather cam, had cut out. Not unusual, he thought. The storm was knocking out signals all over the country. But then, under the hiss of the static, he thought he heard something. A faint, broken voice. He leaned closer, straining to make out the words. It was fragmented, like someone was trying to speak through water. He froze. The station was locked. No one else was in the building. Still, he got up, checked the control room, then the hallway. Nothing. When he came back, the voice was still there. Louder this time. Clearer. I can see you. The hair on his arm stood straight up. He muted the monitor, but the voice didn't stop. The words were still coming, tiny and distant, as though the static had burned them into the air itself. He pulled the plug. The screen went black. Silence. He sat back down, trying to steady his breathing. And then, from somewhere deep in the building, down the unlit hallway, he heard it again. No distortion this time, no static, just a low, rasping whisper, close enough to feel on his ear. Don't turn around. He didn't. Not that night. He sat there until his first shift worker arrived at dawn, then walked out without a word. He quit the job the next day. Weeks later, a replacement security guard claimed that he started hearing interference in the cameras late at night too. Sometimes it was laughter, sometimes his own name, and sometimes a silence that felt heavier than any noise. Some encounters are over in seconds. Others stretch on just long enough for you to realize you've made a mistake. And when that happens, the only thing left is to hope you can get away before it notices you. This account comes from a pair of friends driving down an old back road just after midnight. They'd been heading home for a weekend camping trip. The kind of rural shortcut you only take when you know the area. And even then, only if you're brave enough to trust a road with no lights, no markings, and no one else around for miles. They were talking quietly, the sound of the tires humming over the cracked asphalt, when the driver spotted something in the ditch up ahead. At first, it looked like a deer, maybe injured, its pale shape crouched low. He slowed the car, rolling the headlights over it. That's when they realized. It wasn't a deer. It was hairless, skin stretched too tight over long, bony limbs. Its arms were folded under its body in a way no animal should be able to manage, and its head was turned towards them, not lifting, not moving, just turned, like it had already been watching as they approached. The passengers swore they saw its mouth curl into a faint, unnatural smile. Neither of them spoke. The driver eased off the brake, intending to pass without stopping. But as the car rolled by, the thing unfolded itself in one swift, fluid movement, rising to stand on limbs that seemed far too long for its body. It stepped out of the ditch with shocking speed, crossing the narrow strip of road in just 2 strides. The driver floored it. Gravel sprayed from the tires as the car fishtailed and sped forward. In the side mirror they caught one last glimpse. The thing standing in the middle of the road, head tilted, watching them go. They didn't stop until they reached the next town, and even then they sat in the parking lot of a gas station for almost an hour before either one of them could speak. Weeks later, the passenger claimed he had started seeing the same pale shape in different places, crouched in his backyard at night, at the edge of the woods near his work. Even once on the side of the highway, always watching, always still. Some people meet the Rake for only a moment, others lose hours they can't explain. And it's what happens in that missing time that truly leaves a mark, even if they never see it again. This story comes from a solo camper in the Pacific Northwest, a man who had been hiking the same trails for years without incident. He wasn't reckless, but he preferred the quiet of going alone. No music, no radio, just the sounds of the forest. He'd pitched his tent by a small, slow-moving river. The sun had set an hour earlier, and the only light was the flicker from his small campfire. He remembers sitting with his back against a log, sipping a coffee from a tin mug, when the forest suddenly felt wrong. It wasn't a sound, it was the absence of sound. No crickets, no flowing water, just a flat, heavy stillness pressing in from all sides. And that's when he saw it. Across the fire, just at the back of the tree line, something pale was crouched low. At first, he thought it was a trick of the firelight, the shape of a rock or patch of bark catching the flames. But then it moved, slowly, deliberately. It stepped closer, each movement impossibly smooth, until it was just far enough into the light for him to see the long, thin fingers resting on the ground, and the hollow, lidless eyes fixed on him. The camper says he stood up without meaning to, the mug slipping from his hand. He doesn't remember anything after that. When he woke, the fire was cold. The sky was lightening with dawn. And his watch was gone. Not broken, not misplaced. Gone from his wrist entirely. He packed up and hiked out immediately. But the strangest part came later, when he checked the timestamp on the photos from his camera. The last photo he'd taken before dark was 9:14 p.m. The next photo, one he didn't remember taking, was a blurry, tilted shot of a tree line at 3:47 a.m. In the corner of the frame, just at the edge of focus, was a pale, elongated shape. The man says he's never camped alone again. Sometimes people think they're the ones doing the tracking, but there are things out there that can turn the tables in seconds. And when they do, it doesn't matter how experienced you are. This account comes from a former park ranger in the Appalachian Mountains, a man with 20 years on the job who prided himself on knowing every trail, ridge and gully in his sector. One autumn evening just before dusk, he receives a call about strange noises near an old service trail, an area closed to the public. Locals claimed to have heard screaming in the woods, though none could agree whether it sounded human. The ranger grabbed his flashlight, sidearm and radio, and then set out. The trail was quiet, but he noticed something unusual almost immediately. Patches of damp earth disturbed in a long, narrow pattern, as if something had been dragging itself along the ground. He followed the marks deeper into the forest. The light faded fast under the canopy, and soon the only sound was his boots on damp leaves. Up ahead, he caught a glimpse of movement. Something pale slipping between the trees. At first he thought it was a person, maybe an injured hiker, but he called out. It didn't respond, it just stopped and turned its head towards him. Even in the fading light, he saw the glint of its eyes, too reflective, like an animal caught in headlights. Then it moved, fast, too fast. The ranger gave chase, crashing through the undergrowth, his flashlight beam bouncing wildly. Each time he caught sight of it, it was further ahead, but always looking back, as if making sure he was still following. Then the trail split. He hesitated only a second before taking the left path. That's when he heard it. Not ahead of him anymore, but behind. Heavy, deliberate steps closing in. He spun, flashlight slicing through the dark, but saw nothing. The radio on his hip crackled suddenly to life. A burst of static followed by a single word. Closer. The ranger ran. He didn't stop until he reached the main service road, lungs burning, flashlight nearly dead. When he looked back, the tree line was still. Silent. He filed a report, but left out the part about the voice on the radio. 2 weeks later, he resigned. In his own words, I know how to track bears, wolves, even cougars. But this thing, it was tracking me. Stories are one thing, but you hear enough of them from people who've never met, never spoken. You start wondering if they're all seeing the same thing, or if there's something else at work entirely. Some folklorists believe that Rake is tied to the same root myths as the Wendigo or the Skinwalker, a spirit born from human sin, grief, or hunger. In this view, it may have once been a guardian of the forest, twisted by violence or bloodshed into a predator of men. The journal entry from 1691, with its almost reverent description, hints that the creature was known and feared long before modern accounts began. If this is true, the Rake might not be hunting at random. It could be marking trespassers, stalking only those who violate some long-forgotten rule of the land. Others think the Rake isn't from our world at all. The missing time in the campus story, the sudden changes in location, and the strange distortion in the voices in the static account suggest something more than physical stalking. The theory claims the Rake slips between realities, appearing only when conditions, electrical storms, certain phases of the moon, moments of extreme fear, are right. The idea is chilling because it means you can't build a fence against it, locks, doors, walls. None of it matters if it can simply arrive in your space. Then there's the cryptozoological explanation, one that treats the Rake as a living, breathing animal, perhaps a remnant of some early hominid line. Its pale skin could be an adaptation to nocturnal life, the elongated limbs perfect for rapid movements through dense forests. Some hunters report finding strange resting spots, shallow depressions in the ground surrounded by broken branches. as if something heavy had crouched there for hours. If this theory is correct, the Rake isn't supernatural at all, which might be the most terrifying possibility of all, because it means it can be hunted, and anything that can be hunted can learn to hunt back. The truth is, no one knows. Spirit, predator, or something in between. Every encounter leaves more questions than it answers. But the one thing every story agrees on, once you've seen it, you'd never stop feeling watched. So, what do you think the Rake really is? Leave your theory in the comments. I'll be reading every single one, as long as something doesn't get to me first. And if you've enjoyed tonight's tale, share the fire, subscribe, and come back next time for another story that shouldn't be real, but just might be.